I actually felt there was no way I could fight this. That actually I may as well just accept the inevitable, because the whole of culture seems to be against me. That they're going for, you know, the priest and the doctor and the lawyer and the teacher, and it seems to be professional people that seem to be coming up more and more and more. I'm Peter Griffiths, and I'm a retired surveyor, was my last job. But in Wales, I was a Baptist minister for 20 years. And it's during that period of time that my story takes place. It's difficult to unpack this story, and you know, in a small way, and to try and condense it into 5 minutes. But basically what happened to me was I had an affair with a woman who had 3 daughters, one of whom was quite a disturbed child, I would say, when I knew her, and who really didn't like me at all and didn't take to me one bit. I was in the relationship because it was an affair. The woman was in the relationship because I believe she wanted me to take it further, to become a husband, in effect. And that wasn't going to happen, so there was a tremendous amount of tension. It showed a lot about my own personality, if you like, and I had to come to terms with my own sexual understanding. And it has been a difficult journey for me over these past years. But I had put all that behind me. My marriage had broken down. I left my wife for 3 months and was still seeing this woman. I then decided to go home to my wife, and I stayed with her for another 3 years, but it didn't work. It just, something had gone out of the marriage, and it just didn't work. And basically what happened was I came to London to begin again. I'd lost all kudos, if you like, in the valleys. I felt I could no longer hold my head up. That people were looking at me with accusation. That they were looking at me as a strange kind of anomaly. This was a man who had buried our dad. Now he was, an adulterer. Now it was publicly known. It was. People knew about this. You don't hide this sort of thing in the Welsh Valley. I mean, it was all over. And it was a 9-day wonder, probably, and probably people moved on moved on from that. But I sought secular employment for a number of years, got a job, and retrained as a surveyor. And eventually, in 2000, I came to London. And I've lived in London ever since 2000. The year I retired was 2014, and I retired on the Friday night. And on the Saturday, it was my 65th birthday. So on the Friday night, I had a wonderful party, a wonderful send-off from the company I worked for. I'd worked for literally since I'd come to London. And on the Monday morning at 5:30, the first day of my retirement, I was awoken by some heavy banging on my door, and 2 very large police officers telling me that, asking me, was I Peter Griffiths? To which I replied, yes. They then came in and told me that an accusation had been made against me by a particular person. Did I know her? And I said, yes, I did. Of course I knew her. She was the daughter of the woman I was having an affair with 20 years ago. And the accusation was that I had raped this girl when she was 15 years of age, at least 4, maybe 5 times. Now at first, I couldn't take this in. I couldn't believe it. I mean, you wouldn't. It's Kafkaesque in its nature. I just couldn't take it in. I thought somebody was playing a practical trick on me from work. I honestly thought that the boys had got together in work and were doing this, and that the police would take me down the road, and halfway to Colindale police station, they'd open the back door and said, I got you, walk home. That's what I thought. I realised when the door slammed behind me in the cell in Colindale, and I was faced with a concrete bed and a stainless steel toilet, that this was serious. They had taken my DNA, my fingerprints, they had photographed me, they had refused to allow me to take my heart medication because they felt that they didn't know what it was, and I could have been taking a drug to kill myself? Or what? I don't know. They removed my shoelaces, my belt, you know, and I was in a totally different world. I'd always believed in the British justice system. I'd always believed that it would act fairly. And here I was, accused and treated as guilty. That's what I felt. One of the redeeming features of that was that the officer who arrested me said to me after he'd gone through the formalities, he said to me, "Peter, I wouldn't worry about this if I were you. This girl is known to the police in South Wales, and she's made some accusations, and there've been all kinds of medical problems with her." He thought she had mental health issues. And I just didn't know what to say. I was gobsmacked. Later on, when I was charged, after being charged, and was in a tremendous emotional state, and had started drinking quite heavily in the evenings because I couldn't cope with this pain. I'd written to my solicitor and told him that, you know, as God is my witness, I never touched this girl, you know. I will go to my grave, you know, this kind of thing. You know, as you do. And you know, I became uninhibited then, let's put it that way. And within half an hour, 2 police officers turned up at my door and took me into the psychiatric unit in Barnet. And I thought, why am I here? What on earth, what have I, you know? They were worried that this was getting to me to such an emotional extent that actually I would do something about it. That I was so emotionally disturbed, perplexed by all of this. And of course, I can't throw the first stone. I can't throw back at my accuser. I'm a Christian minister. I can't go back and say, well, she's a slag, a whore. What can I say? I can't do that. Mm-hmm. I have to live with my conscience. I have to live with my innocence. But I have to live also knowing that this is a sick young woman who has made these accusations against me, and I have to forgive her. It took a long time to do that. And actually, I discovered that as I went through that process of praying and forgiving, every day I did this for months, that I got better. Mm. And it was that getting better that started me, that started the anger, if you like, that started that anger and said, how could this have happened? How on earth am I in this position? Because it's like fighting your way through treacle, okay? The bureaucratic system, the whole process. My solicitor said to me, you've never been through this process before. Old lags know it. They know how the system works. They know who to pull on, who to ask, who to go to, what to say. You don't. It seems like you're fighting a system that you don't know. It's incomprehensible to you. And that's exactly what it was. And I felt like Joseph K. in Kafka's trial, you know. I actually felt there was no way I could fight this. That actually I may as well just accept the inevitable, because the whole of culture seems to be against me. That they're going for, you know, the priest and the doctor and the lawyer and the teacher, and it seems to be professional people that seem to be coming up more and more and more in these cases, and I don't stand a chance. You know, the amount of things that were going on in the Catholic Church, for example, still have come out, you know, recently, and I'm thinking to myself, I am condemned before I start. Why? You know, I can't fight this. When I was in the magistrates' court in Wales, and I was sent to the Crown Court for trial, one of the lawyers who was there touting for work, actually, said to me, he said, he said, you're part of the witch hunt. Oh, he said, gosh, we've had hundreds. He said, they're going for clergy, doctors, lawyers, anybody they can get their hands on. He said, I wish you luck. I wish you luck. You're up against, you know, a witch hunt. And that was his estimate. And all of this added to my burden of thinking, how on earth am I going to defend myself against these accusations? And I pretty soon took two basic premises out of that, after that sort of suicidal incident, if you like. Two basic premises occurred to me. Number one, I am not going to attack this woman in court. I'm going to treat her as a sick woman, because that's what this is. I'm going to also prove that I could not have been where I was accused. and that I could not have done it. But I was going to prove it. Not her word against mine, not she said, he said, not no corroborating or substantiating evidence, and maybe he did it, maybe he didn't. I'm going to prove that I didn't. That's what I set out to do, and that's what I achieved. A whole string of things there, which I can't go into now because it would take me the rest of today to tell you. But I had a piece of a good fortune during that some documents were kept. Because this woman who I had the affair with and myself, we worked for the same Christian organisation, and the daughter had claimed that I had done this on a particular evening, and I knew that there were timesheets that this woman had signed to say that she was off on those evenings and with me, so that it couldn't have happened. She couldn't have left the flat. And I phoned on the off chance my old director, and he said, yeah, we got a box of things somewhere, I'll go and have a look.
Way beyond the normal burning of the archives.
Exactly. Now, when you say that, this is the other frightening thing, the other Kafkaesque thing that happened. I managed to persuade, if you like, the prosecution, although they were desperate, I think, to prosecute me. I persuaded them that it couldn't happen over a 2-year period, as was in the statements, because I didn't know the woman for 2 years. I only knew her for a year. Okay, it's a year then. So it changed the story. I said, well, it couldn't have been a year because actually I would have been with my wife every night except for the 3-month period, the 11-week period, I left home. And I lived on my own, and I used to visit this woman on a Friday night. So there are 11 Friday nights. And those are the ones I'm concentrating on. The prosecution said, well, it must have been then 4 times during those 11 weeks. So we're now gone from 2 years down to 11 weeks. Anything. You know, they're following along the story. Which, incidentally, going back to the statements, I felt it was coached. There were 2 things, 2 possible ways. I deal with books. I read a lot. I've done textual criticism at uni, you know, on New Testament, on Greek, on Hebrew. I knew, looking at these documents, that one of 2 things happened. Either they colluded prior to giving their statements to the police, or the police rewrote it in a particular way and fed them. Yeah. Now, in the trial, when she gave her witness testimony, the prosecution actually at several points led her and put words into her mouth and said, well, no, it's penis. And then she'd say penis. I also picked up in her deposition to the police, in her statement to the police, some wording which triggered something in my memory. And what happened was that she had said, I had come into the room and gone, shh. And I thought, I've heard that somewhere else, somewhere before. She also said that I had said she was evil and that I was doing this to get the devil out of her. And I thought, I've heard that phrase somewhere before. And it came to me where I'd heard that. I'd heard it in, I think his name was Michael Laval. I think he was an actor in Coronation Street. And I think a year or 2 previously he'd been falsely accused. And I thought, that's where I've heard it. I connected it in my mind with that. I went back and searched. I Googled everything on Michael Laval, and I found an account. I don't know whether it was in the Mirror or in the Sun or one of them, but all those words were there. They were all there. Now, why on earth didn't somebody remember that? If I remembered it, why couldn't, if my barrister, you know, laid an emphasis on, why couldn't the police remember that? Hang on a minute, you know, this has occurred somewhere else. I think the police were not interested one bit in the truth of the matter at all. What they wanted was a conviction. This whole thing is driven by performance, by statistics, it's driven by political dogma, it's driven by ideology, it's driven by all these things. When we believe as people, I have always believed as people, that the justice system stands separate. That actually it's the law in this land that makes Prince Philip and me pay our taxes on the same day. And without law, without the impartiality of law, we're finished. What have we got? You know, and it's that which saddens me about this. I wrote to the CPS. I went on their website. I actually wrote the first stage complaint form, went all the way through it, and up until today, and that's 4 years, nobody has responded, nobody has replied, nobody has acknowledged, nobody has done anything. So they're not interested. They're basically not interested in hearing the truth. And the other thing that I wanted just to make, because this other people can be in this situation as well, I wanted to establish that 11-week period. And I knew that I'd had an operation on my eye 3 or 4 days before I left home. I knew that that operation had taken place in East Glamorgan Hospital. Now, East Glamorgan Hospital is no longer there. It's a housing estate now. It's gone. And I knew at this particular time I was feeling particularly low, and my doctor had referred me for psychological counselling. And I know I was seeing a Dr. Rosemary, I forgot her second name, but I was seeing her in East Glamorgan Hospital. So naturally I phoned the NHS. And I asked the person in the NHS if I could have my medical records. And she said, "You don't exist. Your medical records were destroyed in 2006. Your entire medical history." And when I said, why have you done that? She said, "Because you haven't accessed the NHS in Wales for over 6 years. And it is policy to actually destroy the record." Now that is Kafkaesque. As far as I'm concerned, that's the bit that really tipped me over the edge. I don't exist. And yet, when I wrote to the police after, and I had a little bit of a ding-dong with them, I wrote to the police after, I said to them, "How long then are you going to keep a record?" And they said, "Oh, until you're 100 years of age, and then we might consider taking it off." So you're going to keep my record for 35 years, and the NHS can't keep it for more than 6. That suddenly woke me up to the kind of society and community and place we are living at the moment, and the place we're in at the moment. The citizen really has lost an awful lot. An awful lot. And he can't turn to the police or to the justice system anymore and expect to be treated fairly. He can't rely upon his medical records. He can't rely upon anything except the police keeping tabs on him, and if they think you're guilty, that's it. You're there for life. Today, I don't think about the case. I don't think about this young woman. I hope she's well. I hope she's receiving treatment. I hope she's getting better. I wish her the best in the world. I really do. And I do mean that. I don't want her to hurt anymore. I contributed in some ways to that family breaking up. I contributed to that. I accept my part. I take responsibility for that. I'm accountable, and I give my account. But I'm not responsible for what I was accused of. No matter how much the circumstantial evidence may have looked that way to the police, they never investigated beyond the ideology that they had, beyond the fact that they were being driven after the Ian Watkins case. They were being driven. The South Wales Police were actually condemned, weren't they, at that time? They were told that they must produce more, they must investigate more, that they must take people seriously, they must believe the accuser. And so it's no surprise that this happened. But what did it do to me? Well, it obviously made me emotional talking about it now. I didn't think that would come back up, but it has. But I live in London. I have a bus pass. I travel around London everywhere on buses and tubes. I go on overground, whatever. And at that time I was still working in a part-time job. If a tube came along and it was packed, before the trial, I would have done what every other Londoner does, and that is squeeze my way in and push my way in and strap hung all the way until I got home. Now I won't do it, because the likelihood is that I'm going to crush up against some woman, and that I could very easily be said, you know, to be sexually assaulting her simply by being crushed in a tube. The other day, not so long ago, this doesn't happen now every day, it doesn't happen very often, it doesn't, you know, but it can happen. It has left me with this. The other day I was travelling on a bus, I was sitting in the middle of the bus. I was sitting where the glass thing is in a double-decker bus, at the middle where the buggies, you know, go. And in front of me there's two seats. There's a woman in one seat next to the window. I'm sitting in this seat, free. There's a woman over here with her buggy. The next seat is free. Behind me there are a couple of men. Behind that there are spare seats. There are a couple of women sitting on their own behind me. I'm sitting, minding my own business, heading down from Barnet to Honest Grove, which is about 7 or 8 stops. And we have come to a stop, and a young woman of probably 30, 35 years of age gets on the bus. And she's on her phone, and she has her coffee, and she comes and she looks around the entire bus, looks at me, and sits down next to me. And the first thing I did was freeze. I was man-spreading, as I am now, and her thigh was against mine. I had folded arms. I had folded arms. The first thing I did was to put my hands on the handle, to look at the CCTV camera, and to move my legs together, and then to force myself to look out of the window, all the way down to Honest Grove. And then, just before Honest Grove, I had the horrible feeling, what if she doesn't get off? I need to catch the tube. I'm not going to reach across and press that button, just in case I touch her inappropriately. That's what it's done to me. I don't, you know, I have to accept this. I mean, there's a little prayer that I say every day. You know, Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, courage to change the things I can, and just the wisdom to know the difference. I survive on that. But it has changed me. It's changed me as a person. I have a good relationship with my family and my ex-wife. I'm going down next week and spending a week with her. I'm working for my daughter next week. You know, things are restored, but they're not the same. They will never be the same. And I blame the CPS, the ideology in the CPS, the political correctness, the whole anti-men thing that's going on at the moment. It is just unbelievable, and it has affected lives. And I hope that by telling my story and saying this, that no matter how dark it is, no matter how deep it's gone, no matter how much is working against you, in my case I wasn't even sure I existed anymore. You know, I'd got to the point where I haven't got a life, I may as well end it. You know, I can't fight this. That actually, by coming through that, and by sitting down, writing a timeline, concentrating on where you were, who you were, I found in my timeline that I misremembered an awful lot. Fortunately, I keep records. When did I resign? Well, I've got, you know, from the ministry, I've got the letter. I got their letter back to me, I can date it. I've kept newspaper cuttings because I was in the press at that time as well. I've kept those, I could date it, I could begin to put together my life, I could begin to go back and see, I do exist. I exist outside what the police are saying. And that was important. And I had to have that. So I hope this helps someone.